I'm welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And we are on to the last little piece of our parsha. And what happened was yesterday we talked about how Joseph had interpreted the dreams of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And here we go. It said in 3 days, right? Vayhi bayom hashlishi. And it was that on the third day, Yom Huledet et Paro. So Pharaoh's birthday, the day of Pharaoh's birth. Vaya, that is the anniversary, right? Vayas mishte lechol avadav. And he made a banquet for all of his servants. Vayisa et rosh sar hamashkim. And he literally lifted up the head, but as Rashi explained to us, it means he took him into account. He included him when he was looking at the various people he needed to serve. So the chief cupbearer, the et rosh sar haofim, and to the head of the chief baker, betoch abadav, amongst his servants. Let's take a look at there's Rashi on this. Yes, Yom Huledet. So this word Huledet, right? It's causative, it's ifel, but it's also passive. And Rashi explains the reason for this grammatical construct here. So Yom Ledato, meaning it's the day of his birth, the day he was born. The Korin lo Yom Ginusia. So there's the Greek word Genesis, right, in there. The Lashon, and I believe it's a word that's used in Mishnaic Hebrew. Mishnaic Hebrew borrows quite a lot of Greek words too. The Lashon Huledet, and the day of his birthing, right? Lefi why she'en havlad nolad, because the child, the baby, isn't just born, ela al yedei acherim, but by means of others. In other words, there's a necessity for midwives or someone to assist in that birthing. Shehachaya, that is the midwife. And notice chaya, right, the one who gives life. Miyaledet et haisha. She assists the woman in giving birth. For alkain hachaya, and for this reason, Rashi tells us, hachaya, the chaya is called moledet. She's called the one who assists in giving birth, right? And this is also a hifil form, a causative form of the verb. And we have examples in Ezekiel chapter 16. Umoladeticha beyom holedet otcha, right? And the way Safaria translates this, your nativity. So there's the Latin form, right? On the day of your birth.
Rabbi, I have the vowels different on both of mine.
Okay.
Mine's
Moladetayich.
the first one causes to deliver or give birth says
Yes.
meyaledet.
Okay.
The second one that you just read says moldotach. It
Okay.
says
Or
kaf
Moldotaya. Right.
with a one line and then a yud
Yes.
and then a chaf
Right.
safit.
Right. No. Oh, okay. This looks like Omoldotayich, right?
It could be, it just
Yeah.
doesn't show the
Okay.
E sound there.
But thank you, Lauren. I appreciate the correction. Right. And sometimes, of course, it's so hard. The yuds and the vavs get kind of swallowed. Sometimes the vav gets misprinted or whatever. So miyaledet, right? Miyaledet. That's definitely the form. Thank you. I really appreciate your catching these things. V'chein, and likewise in Leviticus 13, it says, Achare, I believe this is Uchabas. Do you have the points in, Lauren? Et hanega, after the nega, the plague has been washed. I mean, we're talking about the leprosy, right? So the plague was washed.
Oh, you're right about Molotai. Moldotaich, but okay,
Yes,
then Otach,
yeah.
V'chein acharei, oh, okay.
I believe
Hu,
it's Hukaba. Yes.
it says Huka base.
Oh, okay,
Mine
okay,
does.
okay. All right. No, I'm sure yours is correct. I'm looking at it obviously without any vowels, and I'd have to go back to Leviticus and see. Okay, Hukabes. Okay, after the leprosy, the plague of leprosy has been washed, or that. Okay, and Rashi's explained she kaviso al yedei acharim, because its washing is by means of others. So that's why it's causative passive, if you think about that. So now we've got this phrase, Vayisa et Rosh, right? He lifted up the head, literally. And of course, it's interesting, the play on words, that the same expression is used both for the cupbearer and the baker, except they have different meanings, right? So, Minna'am, he counted them im sha'ar avadav, with the other of his servants. Shahaya moneh hamishartim, because he was counting the servants. Sheyishretu lo besudato, who should serve him in his feast or banquet. V'zachar et elu betocham, and he remembered these amongst them. Kamor Sa'u et Rosh Lashon Minyan, just as we see in the book of Numbers, where it's talking about the census of the Jewish people, or I believe and uses the firm word ki tisa, right, in that parsha, where it's talking about the half shekel contribution in terms of a census. Right. So Lashon Minyan means it has the association or the connotation of counting. And of course, minyan, right? You're familiar with that word. Going on. Vayashev etzar hamashkim al mashkehu, and he put the head of the chief cupbearer back on his place, his original place, the place where he was in charge of making sure that the libations were taking place. Vayiten hakos al kaf paro, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yes.
David pointed out in the chat that you didn't share the text.
Oh, oops. Sorry.
I wasn't thinking about it.
Oh, God.
I have it in front of me. So.
Sorry. Okay, thanks. Thanks, David. Sorry. Here goes. I guess it's not just a question of getting up late. It's the brain is also a little late. Okay.
I was just
Sorry.
kind of wondering, so I wanted to
Yes.
say the background in case it was my problem.
No,
So
no. You're absolutely right. So sorry. So here we were. We started up here. Okay, so now you just take a look here, right? Where he lifted up the head of the right, lifted included. I'm so sorry. VaYeshev. Well, okay. I need a director. Okay, so this is where he replaced, right? He placed the chief cupbearer in his position of libations, right? Of making sure that people had sufficient to drink, proper things to drink, and he placed the cupbearer placed the cup into the hand of Pharaoh, and this is where we're at now. The Etzar Haofim Tala, whereas the chief baker he hanged. Ka'asher patar lehem Yosef, just as Joseph had interpreted their dreams for them. And this is a cliffhanger. But remember, velo zachar sar hamashkin et Yosef, but the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. Vayishkachehu, not only did he not remember, he forgot him. So there is that duplication there in the statement. So we are left with a cliffhanger at the end of this parsha. Velo zachar samashkin. We're saying this is the Rashi is saying is this that this part of the sentence is bo bayom, that is that very day. In other words, when this was happening to him, he didn't think about the fact that Joseph had told him that this was going to happen. And remember, Joseph had asked him to please remember him. Vayishkachehu la'achar mikan, and he forgot him after that day. Mipnei, and here is a famous explanation. Yes, David.
Yeah, so really quickly, and maybe I missed this. What exactly did the baker, the distinction between the baker and the wine steward?
Yes.
So why does the baker hang? I mean, what? Because they both committed an offense, and
Right.
yet, one is, forgiven, and the other one isn't. So I'm sure there's a lot of significance behind this.
Yes. No, it's good. And I'm not sure that I can go to the full depth of the distinction, but I remember Rashi saying that there was a fly in the cup of wine. Now, the fly could get in at any point, right? At any point. However, there was a pebble in the piece of bread that the baker gave to the king. So that was the offense of the baker, is that there was a tzror, a pebble in the piece of bread. So
The pebble is a more grievous offense, I guess.
well, let's put it this way: it showed a much heavier lack of concern on the baker's part, because at what point would the pebble get into the bread and into the dough, right? Whereas the fly could have gotten in at the very last second.
Yeah.
I mean,
that makes sense.
I would have to think that. It's not that I read an explanation like that, but that seems to would be the difference, and as to why now there might be other reasons as well, and it is interesting, by the way, of course, that we're looking at bread and wine. That is very significant, right?
Yeah.
Because we make special blessings over wine and over bread. So there's some issue going on here. And in Psalm 104, it talks about bread being there to sustain human life and wine to gladden one's heart, right? So the function of bread is a different kind of function than the function of wine. And of course, it's also, again, if you want to sort of dig a little deeper on this, that life is not just a matter of sustenance. There's also a level of enjoyment that needs to go along with it as well. It's not just the basic sustenance. So there has to be more than simply a pragmatic layer to our lives. So, I mean, again, the whole idea of why wine and bread are singled out. And the reason given for that in the halacha, in Jewish law, is because they're singled out in that psalm. Although oil, which would be olive oil, is also mentioned, but for whatever reason, olive oil is not included in these special blessings.
Interesting.
I'm glad you raised the question. It's great. All right.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So here we go. So what happened? Joseph, why did he forget him, right? So here we go. Vayishkachehu la'achar mikan. And this was subsequent time. Mipnei shetala bo Yosef I'm going to say lizochro, right? Because Joseph made it dependent. In other words, he depended on the wine steward to remember him. Huskak lihiyot asur shtei shanim. As a result, he was punished, right? Huskak means it became necessary for him to be imprisoned another 2 years. Why? Shinemar, as it says, Tilim Mim, in the 40th chapter of the book of Psalms, Psalm 40. Ashrei HaGever, happy is the man, Asher Sam Hashem Mivtacho, who placed his trust in God, Asher Sam Hashem Mivtacho, who made God his trust, Velo Pana El Rahavim, and did not turn to, and Sfaria translates this as the arrogant, to people who are in power, I imagine is what it's talking about. So, Velo Batach. Okay, so that's the end of the quote. Velo Batach al Hamitzrim, and that means, and did not, Rashi's interpreting this, and did not put his trust on Egyptians, hakruyim Rahav. So Mitzrayim, Egypt, I believe, is a descendant of Rahav. And that's why there's, in a sense, a play on words that, while in the context of the psalm itself, it may in fact refer to arrogant people, but the fact is that the word Rahav is also referred to with regards to Egyptians. And so, again, because of Yosef's level of spirituality and stuff, he would be judged in a far more critical way than, say, someone who was not at his level. And he had to wait. And we do, in fact, will follow the next, at the very next Parsha is going to talk about 2 years later. So this is something for us to internalize as we wish on this. And this is the end of the Parsha at this point. So we have completed the Parsha of vaYeshev in our studies with the Rashi. Before I stop the recording for this, does anybody have any last comments so far?
How old was Joseph? Was he 28 years old then?
Yes, I guess he was. Good for you, Harlan, because it says he was 30 when he stood in front of Pharaoh.
Okay.
So I guess he would have had to have been 28. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to stop the recording.